As she continued to grow as a musician, she embraced each opportunity with gratitude, humility, and determination. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more critics, and more moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had the skills, the heart, and the resilience to face them. The piano would continue to be her guide, her companion, and her voice, allowing her to share her journey, her emotions, and her talent with the world. The day had come for her most significant performance yet. It was not just a recital or a small stage anymore. It was a live television event broadcast to thousands of viewers. The excitement and pressure were immense. She knew that this performance would mark a defining moment in her life, a chance to share her music with the world and to finally leave behind the doubt and mockery that had once clouded her path. Her heart raced with anticipation as she arrived at the venue. The grand stage and bright lights making everything feel larger than life. Backstage, she took a deep breath and focused on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the early days when she had practiced alone, the times she had doubted herself, and the moments when the man who had mocked her tried to diminish her confidence. She remembered the hours spent perfecting her technique, the nights filled with emotion and music, and the victories, both small and large, that had shaped her. Each memory fueled her determination, reminding her that she had earned this opportunity through perseverance and dedication as she walked onto the stage. The lights shone brightly, and the audience's applause filled the room. She could see familiar faces and strangers alike, all waiting to witness her performance. And there, near the front, was the man who had once mocked her talent. His presence was a stark reminder of the past, but instead of fear or hesitation, she felt a quiet sense of resolve. She had grown, she had practiced, and she was ready to let the music speak for her, sitting at the grand piano. She placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes for a moment. The room fell silent, the world narrowing down to the piano, her fingers, and the music. She began to play, her first notes soft and deliberate, drawing the audience into her world. Each chord, each melody, carried her emotions, her struggles, and her triumphs. The music was not just sound. It was a story, a reflection of every challenge she had faced and every step she had taken to reach this moment. The performance gradually built in complexity and intensity. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision and grace, the music flowing effortlessly yet powerfully. She allowed herself to feel every note, letting her emotions guide her playing. The audience was captivated, their attention fixed on the story unfolding through the piano. Even the man who had mocked her remained silent, unable to hide the astonishment in his eyes. He had not expected this, and he could no longer deny her talent as she continued. The music became more expressive, incorporating subtle variations and improvisations that showcased her creativity and emotional depth. She conveyed vulnerability, strength, and joy, weaving them together seamlessly. The audience was moved, some closing their eyes to absorb the music fully, others leaning forward, captivated by the intensity and beauty of the performance. Each note was a declaration of her journey, a testament to her resilience, a celebration of her talent. The climax of the piece arrived, and she poured all her energy and emotion into the music. Her hands moved swiftly and confidently, each chord resonating with clarity and power. The audience was mesmerized, completely absorbed in the experience. She felt a surge of exhilaration and fulfillment, knowing that every hour of practice, every moment of doubt, and every challenge had led to this extraordinary moment. The man who had mocked her sat silently, a mixture of surprise and awe in his expression. She did not need his approval, but the recognition of her talent in his eyes was a quiet affirmation of how far she had come. As the final notes echoed through the hall, there was a brief moment of silence. Then the room erupted in applause, cheers, and standing ovations. The audience celebrated not only her skill, but the emotional journey she had conveyed through her music. She felt tears welling up in her eyes, a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. She had faced her fears, embraced her passion, and transformed doubt into an unforgettable performance that touched countless hearts. She realized that the true reward was not just recognition or applause, but the joy of creating, the satisfaction of mastering a skill, and the ability to move hearts through music. Each note she played was a reflection of her journey, a story of perseverance, courage, and passion. She had learned that talent alone was not enough, but when combined with effort, resilience, and love for what you do, it could lead to extraordinary growth and fulfillment. By the end of this period, she was no longer the timid, uncertain girl who had once doubted her own abilities. She was a confident, skilled, and expressive musician, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The piano had been her teacher, her friend, and her guide, and she had embraced every lesson it offered. She had learned to trust herself, to believe in her talent, and to understand the power of music to transform not only her life, but also the lives of those who listened. Months had passed since her performance at the community hall, and her reputation as a talented pianist had begun to spread. People who had once doubted her were starting to take notice. Invitations to perform at bigger venues arrived, and she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Each opportunity represented a chance to challenge herself, to show how far she had come, and to share her music with a larger audience. Among the invites, there was one that made her stomach tighten, a live performance on a popular local stage. With an audience that included the man who had mocked her for so long, she spent days preparing for this performance. Knowing that it would be her most important one yet, she practiced for hours each day, perfecting the piece she had chosen. It was a composition that allowed her to display both technical skill and emotional depth. She focused on every detail, the pressure of her fingers on the keys, the timing of each chord, the rise and fall of the melody, and the expressions on her face that would convey the story behind the music. She visualized the audience, imagining their reactions, and reminding herself that the music was hers to share, not theirs to judge. The night of the performance arrived, and the venue was filled with anticipation. The lights were bright, the stage polished, and the atmosphere electric. Backstage, she felt a flutter of nerves, but she also felt a deep sense of purpose. She thought about all the practice sessions, the setbacks, the moments of doubt, and the victories. She remembered how far she had come and how much she had grown. The man who had mocked her was there, seated prominently, a reminder of the challenges she had faced and overcome as she walked onto the stage. The applause of the audience washed over her. She took a deep breath and sat at the grand piano, her hands hovering above the keys. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself, and then began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, but full of intention. She let the music flow naturally, feeling each note, each chord, each melody as an extension of her emotions. The audience was immediately drawn in, captivated by the beauty and precision of her playing. The performance gradually built in intensity. She played with confidence, her fingers moving swiftly and accurately across the keys. Each phrase conveyed a story, from moments of gentle reflection to bursts of energetic passion. She could feel the audience responding, leaning forward, holding their breath, captivated by the narrative she was creating. Even the man who had mocked her remained silent, his expression unreadable, but she sensed that he was paying attention, that he could no longer dismiss her talent. She allowed herself to become fully immersed in the music, losing awareness of the audience and the stage around her. The piano became an extension of herself, a voice through which she could express everything she felt. Her heart beat in rhythm with the notes, her emotions guiding the tempo and dynamics. She embraced the vulnerability of the moment, allowing her feelings to shape the performance and touch the hearts of those listening. Throughout the piece, she introduced subtle variations and improvisations, adding layers of complexity and personal expression. She experimented with tempo, dynamics, and phrasing, creating tension and release that kept the audience engaged. The music was alive, flowing with emotion and intention. Each note carried her story, her struggles, her perseverance, and her triumphs. She was telling a tale without words, allowing the piano to speak for her in a way that was both intimate and powerful. The climax of the performance arrived, and the music soared. Her fingers moved with precision and passion, each chord resonating through the hall. The audience was spellbound, completely absorbed in the performance. She felt a surge of exhilaration, knowing that every practice session, every hour of dedication had led to this moment. The man who had mocked her sat frozen, his previous arrogance replaced by astonishment. He could not hide his surprise, and she did not need him to. She was playing for herself, for her music, and for everyone who believed in her journey. As the final notes echoed through the hall, there was a moment of silence. The audience held its breath, savoring the lingering resonance of the music. Then the room erupted in applause, cheers, and standing ovations. People clapped and shouted, their faces glowing with admiration and joy. She felt tears welling up, a mixture of relief, pride, and happiness. She had faced the challenge, poured her heart into the performance, and touched the audience in a profound way. The journey of doubt, criticism, and perseverance had culminated in a moment of triumph. After the performance, people approached her with words of praise and encouragement. Teachers, fellow musicians, and audience members expressed amazement at her talent and the emotional depth of her playing. Each compliment reinforced her confidence and reminded her of the journey that had brought her here. She realized that the music was not just about technical skill, but about connection, expression, and the ability to move people in ways that words could not. Even the man who had mocked her approached quietly. He offered no words of apology or praise, but there was a subtle acknowledgement in his eyes. She did not seek validation from him. She had already proven to herself what she was capable of. The experience of overcoming his doubt, facing him on stage, and performing with authenticity had given her a sense of empowerment that went beyond any external recognition. That night, as she left the venue, she reflected on her journey. She thought about the early days of practicing in her living room, the nights filled with doubt, the moments when she questioned her abilities, and the persistence that had carried her forward. She realized that every challenge, every setback, and every moment of criticism had contributed to her growth as a musician and as a person. The piano had been her constant companion, guiding her through both joy and struggle. In the days that followed, she continued to practice, to explore new pieces, and to refine her technique. She understood that growth was an ongoing process, and that each performance was an opportunity to learn and improve. She also embraced the emotional aspect of her music, recognizing that her ability to convey feeling through the piano was what truly set her apart. Her performances became more expressive, more nuanced, and more powerful with each opportunity. She began to dream of even larger stages, of sharing her music with wider audiences, and of inspiring others through her journey. The experience of facing her doubts and the man who had mocked her had taught her resilience, courage, and the importance of believing in oneself. She knew that there would always be challenges, but she also knew that she had the strength to overcome them. Her music was her voice, her passion, and her proof of perseverance. Through it all, she remained humble and grateful. She acknowledged the teachers, mentors, family members, and friends who had supported her along the way. She celebrated every achievement, no matter how small, and learned from every setback. The journey of becoming a skilled musician was not just about talent, but about dedication, resilience, and the willingness to embrace growth. She understood that the true reward lay not only in recognition, but in the joy of creating, the satisfaction of improvement, and the ability to connect with others through music. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was an extension of her soul, a medium through which she could communicate her deepest emotions. Each performance was a conversation, a story, and a reflection of her journey. She had transformed doubt and criticism into motivation, isolation into creativity, and practice into artistry. Her talent had grown beyond what she had imagined, and her connection to music had shaped her character, her confidence, and her vision for the future. She understood that music had the power to transcend obstacles, to convey feelings that words could not, and to inspire both the performer and the listener. Her journey was a testament to the idea that talent alone was not enough. But when combined with effort, perseverance, and a genuine love for what you do, it could lead to extraordinary achievements. The experience of performing on that stage, facing her fears, and captivating the audience had solidified her belief in herself and her music. As she left the hall, carrying her music sheets and the memories of the performance, she looked back at the stage one last time. She felt gratitude for every struggle, every late night, every tear, and every moment of doubt that had led her to this point. The piano had been more than an instrument. It had been a teacher, a friend, and a guide. She knew that the journey would continue, and that there would be more obstacles to face. But she also knew that she had the strength to overcome them. The music was hers. It had proven her worth in the most beautiful way possible. After her unforgettable performance at the community hall, she felt a new sense of confidence. The applause and admiration had lifted her spirits, but she knew she could not stop there. Talent alone would not carry her through the challenges that lay ahead. She understood that to grow as a musician, she had to dedicate herself to practice, to explore new techniques, and to push the boundaries of her skill. The joy of playing had now mingled with the determination to improve, to reach heights that she had only dreamed of. Every day after school, she returned to the piano with renewed purpose. The lessons she had learned from her previous practice sessions now took on a new meaning. Mistakes were no longer failures. They were opportunities to learn and to grow. She experimented with complex melodies, delicate harmonies, an emotional expression that could move even the most indifferent listener. Each session became a journey, a conversation with the piano, a way to understand herself more deeply and communicate her inner world. The man who had mocked her before was still a shadow in the background of her thoughts. Occasionally, she would hear of his comments through others or see him in public settings, his presence reminding her of past doubts. But the sting of his words no longer had the same power. She had learned that validation came from within, from the hours of effort, from the music that flowed naturally from her heart. She could not let anyone diminish her joy or her progress. His doubt became a catalyst, motivating her to work harder, to prove to herself, not just to him, that her talent was genuine. Her family watched her transformation with pride. They had seen her struggle with doubt, fear, and criticism, and now they witnessed her growing resilience and skill. They encouraged her to take part in larger performances, competitions, and opportunities that would test her abilities and expand her experience. She accepted each challenge with careful preparation and quiet confidence, knowing that every stage she played on was a step toward mastering her craft and sharing her music. With a wider audience, she also sought guidance from teachers and mentors who could help refine her technique and expand her understanding of music. Lessons became more intensive, focusing not only on playing the piano, but on interpreting the emotional depth of each piece. She learned how to convey joy, sorrow, hope, and determination through music. Using subtle shifts in tempo, dynamics, and expression, these lessons deepened her connection to the piano, making each performance more personal and more powerful. Outside of lessons, she spent countless hours listening to recordings of great pianists, analyzing their style and technique. She noticed how they conveyed emotion, how they created tension and release, and how they connected with their audience. She tried to emulate some of their methods while maintaining her own unique voice. Slowly, her playing became more expressive, more confident, and more authentic. She realized that true talent was not just about hitting the right notes. It was about telling a story, about connecting with listeners on a deeper level. Her practice sessions were not always easy. Some days, her fingers would feel heavy, her mind distracted, and her emotions weary. There were moments when frustration would rise, when she felt that progress was too slow or that her skills were insufficient. But she learned to embrace these challenges. She took breaks when needed, reflected on her mistakes, and returned to the piano with renewed focus. She discovered that persistence was as important as talent, and that the journey of improvement often required patience and resilience. She also began to understand the power of music beyond her own growth. She played for friends, family, and small gatherings, noticing the way her music could touch people's hearts. Some listeners would close their eyes and sway gently, lost in the melody. Others would smile, laugh, or even shed tears. She realized that her music was not only a reflection of her feelings, but also a gift to others. This understanding motivated her further, inspiring her to continue creating music that could inspire comfort and move people. The man who had mocked her was occasionally present at these performances as well. Initially, she felt a surge of nervousness at his gaze, a reminder of past humiliation. But with each performance, she noticed a change. His expressions shifted from smirks to neutral curiosity, then to silent acknowledgement. She did not seek his approval, but the subtle change in his demeanor gave her an unspoken sense of accomplishment. She was no longer defined by his criticism. Instead, she was defined by her dedication, her growth, the music she created. During this period of growth, she also faced other challenges. Some peers continued to doubt her abilities, others questioned her choices, and at times she struggled with her own self-doubt. But each obstacle strengthened her resolve. She had learned to listen to constructive feedback, to recognize which criticism was valid, and to disregard negativity that served no purpose. She became selective in her energy, focusing on what nourished her talent and inspired her creativity. Her emotional connection to the piano deepened over time. She discovered that playing was not just a technical skill, but a form of self-expression that could release pent-up feelings, communicate unspoken thoughts, and bring clarity to her mind. Late nights became sessions of reflection, where she would play melodies that mirrored her experiences, her fears, her joys, and her dreams. Music became both therapy and celebration, a companion through solitude and a medium through which she could share her innermost self with the world. She also experimented with composing her own music. Small fragments at first, simple tunes that gradually became more complex and emotive. She wrote pieces that reflected her journey, her struggles with doubt, her victories, and her aspirations. These original compositions became a source of pride and creativity, allowing her to explore new dimensions of her talent. She would spend hours refining each note, ensuring that every chord and rhythm resonated with her intentions. The process of composing taught her patience, precision, and the satisfaction of seeing her ideas come to life. As her skills grew, so did her confidence in performing before larger audiences. She began participating in regional music competitions, facing more experienced musicians and diverse audiences. The pressure was higher, the expectations greater, but she approached each performance with careful preparation and self-belief. The applause and recognition she received were affirming, but more importantly, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment in knowing that her dedication and hard work had paid off. Each stage she stepped onto strengthened her resolve and sharpened her talent. Her connection with the audience became an essential part of her performances. She learned to read their reactions, to adjust the intensity and emotion of her playing to match the atmosphere. She discovered the joy of sharing music not only as sound but as an emotional journey. People began to remember her performances, to speak of the way her music moved them. She realized that the piano had become more than an instrument. It had become a voice, a tool for connection, and a channel for her creativity. The man who once mocked her no longer had the power to intimidate. She had transformed his criticism into motivation, using it to fuel her improvement. Each performance, each rehearsal, each composition was a testament to her perseverance. She understood that life would always have doubters, but she also knew that talent combined with effort and heart could overcome negativity. Her music spoke for her, louder and clearer than words ever could. She began to dream bigger. She imagined performing on larger stages, sharing her music with wider audiences, and inspiring others through her journey. These dreams were not just fantasies. They were goals she worked toward every day. She visualized the emotions she wanted to convey, the stories she wanted to tell, and the impact she hoped to have on listeners. Each practice session, each performance, was a step toward making those dreams a reality. Through all this growth, she never forgot the importance of humility and gratitude. She acknowledged the teachers, mentors, family members, and friends who supported her along the way. She celebrated small victories and learned from setbacks. The journey of becoming a skilled musician was not just about personal achievement, but about embracing the community, the learning process, and the joy of music itself. Every day brought new lessons, new opportunities, and new challenges. But she faced them with a quiet determination and a deep love for the piano. She had transformed doubt and mockery into motivation, solitude into creativity, and practice into artistry. Her talent had grown beyond what she had imagined, and her connection to music had deepened in ways that shaped her character, her confidence, and her vision for the future. Every evening, when she sat at the piano, she felt a sense of peace and excitement. She would close her eyes, let the music flow through her fingers, and imagine the day when her talent would no longer be doubted, when the music would speak for itself. And even though the man who mocked her might still be in the audience somewhere, she would no longer let his words define her. She would play with all her heart, with all her soul, and with the quiet confidence that she was capable of greatness. The piano was her world, and in it, she had found herself. The day had arrived for her to perform in front of a small audience at the local community hall. She had been practicing for weeks, preparing a piece she loved, one that was both soft and powerful, gentle and full of emotion. She had imagined this day countless times in her mind, rehearsing every movement of her fingers, every expression on her face, and every feeling she wanted to convey. Her heart was pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. But she knew she had worked hard and was ready as she entered the hall. She noticed familiar faces in the audience, neighbors, friends, teachers, and a few family members. There were also strangers, people curious about the local talent showcase. But one presence caught her off guard. The man who had mocked her for so long was sitting near the front, his eyes fixed on her with a smirk she could not ignore. Her stomach sank, but she reminded herself that this performance was for herself first, not for him. She took a deep breath and walked toward the piano at the center of the stage. The piano was polished and beautiful, a grand instrument that seemed to invite her to play. She sat down on the bench, feeling the weight of the moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she positioned her fingers on the keys. The hall was silent, the air heavy with anticipation. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to calm her nerves, and thought of all the hours she had spent practicing. All the late nights, all the times she had ignored doubt and continued to play. Those memories gave her strength. She began slowly, letting the first few notes flow gently into the quiet room. The music was soft at first, delicate like a whisper, and she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The audience was silent, listening carefully to the notes as they rose and fell, carrying the emotions she had poured into them. Her fingers moved confidently now, each one knowing where to go, each one contributing to the story she wanted to tell. But then she felt it, the familiar tension from the man in the audience. His smirk had not faded, and she could feel his judgment pressing down on her. For a moment, doubt crept into her mind. What if she made a mistake? What if he was right, and she was not as talented as she thought? Her fingers faltered slightly, the music stumbling for just a second. The audience seemed to notice a few shifting in their seats, and her heart sank. She wanted to stop, to give up, but something inside her refused. She remembered every night she had spent practicing, every tear shed when she felt discouraged, every small victory that had built her confidence. She could not let one person's words control her. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs and steady her hands. She reminded herself why she was here, to play for herself, to share the music she loved, to let her emotions speak through the piano. Slowly, she regained her rhythm, her fingers moving with renewed confidence. The music began to grow, stronger and richer, carrying her feelings more clearly than ever before. The room seemed to transform as she played, the audience drawn into the story she was telling through each note. Her performance became a journey. She started with gentle melodies, soft and tender, conveying the moments of doubt and vulnerability she had experienced. Then she transitioned into more powerful passages, each note filled with determination and strength. She played with passion, allowing her emotions to guide her, letting the piano become an extension of herself. The audience was captivated, their eyes fixed on her, their breaths held in anticipation of the next note. Even the man who had mocked her seemed momentarily stunned, his smirk fading as he realized the depth of her talent. She could feel the energy in the room changing as she continued to play. The music was no longer just a personal expression. It had become a bridge between her and everyone present. People leaned forward, their faces reflecting admiration, surprise, and emotion. Some closed their eyes, letting the music fill them completely. Others whispered quietly to one another, clearly impressed by her skill and the way she conveyed her story through sound. She was no longer just a girl on a stage. She was a storyteller, using the piano to communicate feelings that words could never capture. There were moments when she thought she might lose control, when her hands shook or her mind wandered, but she quickly refocused. She had learned that mistakes were part of the journey, that even if a note faltered, the music could recover if she stayed calm and confident. She embraced every note, every chord, every pause, understanding that the music was alive and flexible, just like her. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with exhilaration, as she realized she was creating something truly beautiful in that moment. As the performance reached its peak, the music became more intense, faster, and louder. She played with energy and emotion, pouring everything she had into the piano. The audience could feel it, the power of her passion radiating across the hall. Some people were on the edge of their seats, completely absorbed in the music. The man who had mocked her now sat silently, his previous arrogance replaced by a mixture of surprise and disbelief. He had not expected this. He had not expected her talent to shine so brightly, to move the audience so profoundly. Every note was a statement, a declaration that she was capable, that she had worked hard, and that her dreams were valid. She was no longer performing for approval or recognition. She was performing to express herself, to honor her own journey, and to show that perseverance could overcome doubt and mockery. The music carried the story of her struggles, her determination, and her hope. It spoke of late nights filled with practice, of moments when she felt small and uncertain, and of the joy she discovered through the piano. When the final notes rang out, there was a brief moment of silence. The audience sat still, absorbing the emotions they had just witnessed. Then the room erupted in applause, cheers, and clapping. People stood, moved by her performance and inspired by her courage. She could feel tears in her eyes, not from nervousness or fear, but from the overwhelming sense of accomplishment and pride. She had faced doubt, criticism, and fear, and she had triumphed. Her music had spoken louder than words ever could. The man who had mocked her remained silent, unable to hide his shock. His eyes met hers for a brief moment, and she saw a flicker of respect, though he said nothing. It did not matter what he thought anymore. She had proven to herself and to everyone in the room that her talent was real, her dedication unwavering, and her passion undeniable. The music had carried her beyond fear, beyond mockery, and into a place of recognition and validation. After the performance, people approached her to compliment and encourage her. Teachers praised her technique, neighbors expressed admiration, and friends hugged her tightly, telling her how amazing she had been. Each kind word, each smile reinforced the realization that her efforts had not been in vain. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music had connected with others in a meaningful way. The piano had not only been her companion through solitude and struggle, but it had now become a bridge to the hearts of many, even later. When she walked off the stage and returned to the quiet of the dressing room, she could still feel the energy of the performance lingering within her. Her hands tingled from the intensity of playing, and her heart was full with pride and joy. She realized that this was just the beginning, that the road ahead would bring more challenges, more performances, and more opportunities to share her music with the world. She felt ready to face them, armed with confidence, resilience, and a deep love for the piano. That day marked a turning point in her life. She had faced humiliation and doubt, and she had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. She understood that talent alone was not enough, but with dedication, courage, belief in herself, she could achieve remarkable things. The music had given her a voice, a presence, and a way to express her deepest emotions. She had transformed the fear and mockery she once felt into power and inspiration. She had always been drawn to music. From the first time she touched the piano at a small local school when she was just a little girl, something inside her lit up. Her fingers felt alive when they pressed the keys. The notes seemed to flow from her heart to the instrument effortlessly, as if they were meant to exist there. Every evening, after finishing her schoolwork and chores at home, she would sit by the old, slightly worn piano in her living room. The wood was scratched in places and some keys were sticky, but it did not matter. In those moments, she felt free. Her parents noticed her talent early. They bought her small music books with simple songs for beginners, and she learned them all quickly. Friends would sometimes peek into the room to listen, and even then, they would be amazed by how naturally she could play. But not everyone was kind. There was a man who often came to the music room when she practiced. He was older, confident, and had a certain arrogance that made him seem intimidating. He would watch her play and shake his head. Sometimes he would say, "You're wasting your time on this. You will never be good enough." The words hurt more than she wanted to admit, but she kept playing anyway. She did not understand why he seemed so determined to put her down. The piano was her world, and the music filled her with joy she had never experienced anywhere else. When she played, it was as if she could leave her problems behind. She could forget the arguments at home, the days when she felt small and invisible. The music was hers, and she loved it with every part of her being. But his laughter, his mocking comments, made her doubt herself. It made her question if maybe he was right, maybe she was just pretending to be talented. Despite the hurt, she would not give up. She learned to focus on the keys, on the sound of each note, on the feelings that the music stirred inside her. She began to experiment with different ways of playing. She would try soft, gentle melodies, and then switch to louder, faster ones. Sometimes she would create her own tunes, ones that no one had taught her. She would hum along softly, letting the music fill the room and her heart at the same time. Each day, she felt her connection to the piano grow stronger. Her family was supportive, but they did not always understand the depth of her dedication. They would watch her practice and say, "You are talented, but maybe you should focus on something more practical." She would nod politely, but inside, she knew that nothing could replace the feeling of playing the piano. Nothing else made her feel complete in the way that music did. She had tried to talk to the man who mocked her, to ask why he was so cruel, but he would simply laugh and walk away. His presence was a shadow over her happiness, yet she refused to let it stop her. School was another place where she faced challenges. While other kids would play outside or talk in the hallways, she often spent her free moments in the music room. Sometimes she would hear whispers from classmates, "Why does she spend so much time on the piano? It's not going to get her anywhere." Their words stung, but she reminded herself that they did not understand. They had not felt the way she did when the notes flowed from her fingers, or the sense of peace and power that music gave her. Her teachers were mostly encouraging. Some would smile and say she had a gift, while others were more skeptical, telling her to make sure she had a backup plan. One day a teacher approached her and said gently, "You are very talented, but talent alone is not enough. You must work hard and be ready for challenges." She nodded, understanding that the path ahead would not be easy. She did not mind. She was willing to put in the hours, to practice until her fingers ached, to learn everything she could about music. The piano was her passion. She knew she could not let anyone's words take that away from her. Evenings were her favorite time. After the house grew quiet and the world outside seemed to slow down, she would sit at the piano. The soft glow of a lamp would shine on the keys, and she would lose herself in the music. She would start with songs she knew well, letting her fingers move with ease. Then she would experiment, creating small melodies of her own. Sometimes the music was sad, reflecting the moments when she felt discouraged. Sometimes it was joyful, reflecting the triumph she felt when she learned something new, or when she overcame a small doubt. The man who mocked her was still a presence in her life. He would appear at concerts or small recitals, always with a smirk or a dismissive comment. She hated the way he made her feel small, but she began to understand something important. His opinion did not define her. She started to see his mockery as a challenge, rather than an insult. If he doubted her, then she would prove that she was worth believing in. She did not want revenge, but she wanted the music to speak for her, to show the world what she was capable of. Her friends slowly began to notice the difference. Some would watch her play and say, "Wow, you are really good." Others started to ask if they could listen when she practiced. She felt a sense of pride and joy in sharing her music, even though she still felt the sting of those who doubted her. Music was not just her escape anymore. It was becoming a bridge between her and others. She realized that the piano had given her more than skill. It had given her confidence, determination, and a voice that could not be silenced by anyone's mockery. Sometimes she would sit quietly after practice, her hands resting on the keys, thinking about the future. She wondered if she would ever play on a big stage, if people would ever listen to her and truly hear what she felt through the music. The thought made her heart race with both excitement and fear. She knew that the path would not be easy, that there would be more people like the man who mocked her, more doubts and challenges to face. But she also knew that she could not give up. The piano was a part of her soul, and she would carry it with her no matter what. Her dreams were quiet at first, almost secret. She would imagine a small stage with soft lights, her fingers moving over the keys, and an audience captivated by the sound she created. She would imagine the feeling of pride and accomplishment, the joy of knowing that her music had touched someone else's heart. These dreams fueled her practice, keeping her motivated even on the days when she felt tired or discouraged. She learned to focus on the small victories, the improvements in her technique, the new melodies she discovered. Even when the man mocked her, she started to see his words differently. She realized that he could not understand the connection she had with the piano. He could not see the hours she spent practicing, the emotion she poured into every note, or the dreams she held quietly in her heart. His mockery was only a reflection of his inability to see her talent, not a measure of her worth. This understanding gave her strength. She began to play with more confidence, with more emotion. Letting the music express what words could not, her family noticed the change as well. They saw her determination, her refusal to let others' opinions define her. They began to support her more actively, encouraging her to participate in small recitals and competitions. Each experience built her confidence. Each performance a step toward proving to herself that she was capable of more than anyone had told her. Even when she felt nervous, she reminded herself that the piano was her friend, her companion, and her voice. The quiet moments alone at the piano became sacred. She would sit there for hours, experimenting with different techniques, learning from mistakes, and celebrating small successes. She discovered the power of persistence, the importance of believing in oneself even when others doubted. Music taught her patience and resilience. It taught her that sometimes the most meaningful achievements come not from immediate recognition, but from the quiet, steady effort that builds skill and confidence over time. As she grew, so did her talent. Her fingers became more agile, her sense of rhythm sharper, and her ability to convey emotion through music stronger. She began to imagine herself not just playing for herself, but for others, sharing the joy and emotion that music had given her throughout her life. The dream that had once seemed quiet and fragile now grew stronger and bolder. She wanted to show the world that she could rise above doubt and mockery, that her talent was real, and that her passion could inspire others. The man who had mocked her continued to be a part of her story, but his presence no longer held the power it once did. She learned to focus on her own journey, on her own growth and joy. The piano had given her more than skill. It had given her purpose and the courage to face challenges. She knew that there would be difficult moments ahead, but she also knew that she was ready. She was no longer just a quiet girl practicing alone in a small room. She was a young musician with a voice that demanded to be heard.